So as you can see there, the road safety audit course, which is applicable for Victoria, South Australia, Northern Territory, Tasmania, Queensland, New Zealand, and New South Wales now. I've got to add New South Wales, we should get a big stamp and put that. So that was earlier this year. We got endorsed by the New South Wales government for this course under their regime, which I'll talk to you all about, what different states do, and road safety auditor accreditation and your qualifications and all that. But first things first is to get a bit of road safety audit content into you and the like. Now, I did just say there to Emma to hit the record button, which she's done. Why do we record these sessions? Well, we record these sessions so if you happen to have to miss one for one reason or another, you can watch that in your own time. Also, if you want to go back and review something that was talked about, a case study or these sorts of things, you will have access to the recording. And I do give a content warning. So we do show some road crash scenes and some road crashes. Nothing overly graphic, but if that's something that could disturb you, I just flag that now that we will be looking at those to try to work out how we stop them in the future or make them less severe in the future. Emma, now who are you?
That's me. Hi there, everyone. I am Emma Arrow and I am training coordinator with Safe System Solutions, and I will be your contact for any technical, admin and system issues and things like that that you may have, or anything at all. Christmas present ideas, I can probably help you out with those as well. You would have received either an email from Safe System Solutions, or perhaps you've done a course with us in the past with access details to our learning management system. Our learning management system is where we house all the content. So that's where we'll pop the recordings for the sessions, all of your assignments, all the presentations, extra resources, everything that you need content-wise in relation to the program. If you haven't received your details or you don't remember them from doing another course with us, feel free to shoot me an email. My email is just down there on the screen, and I can certainly help you with all of that. So feel free to shout out about anything like that. If you have any content or technical questions, you're welcome to direct those to Ken, but if you want to direct them to me, that's fine. I can certainly pass them on to Ken. That's not a problem. The other thing I will talk about is how we'll run the session today as far as your participation. So as you can see, Ken is sharing his screen, but we can't see you and we can't hear you at the moment. So the best way for us to hear from you is through the chat screen. So we've got some icons here, so it's just at the bottom of your screen. We do realise that some organisations don't have this feature available in Zoom. So if you don't have it and you need to use the Q&A, I will monitor that as well. So what I'll do is, if you have any questions or anything like that that you would like to direct to Ken, or comments about the content, about the program, or about your own experience, just pop it in the chat. Just make sure in the drop down box that you have everybody listed, and then everyone can see it, and then we'll share that with the group and talk about that. And same with, so if that doesn't work, the Q&A function, I'll manage that as well. And sometimes Ken will ask lots of questions throughout the session for you to answer those, and he'll be giving out lots of prizes as well. And as well as that, for the next few sessions, for those who start early to get everyone warmed up, we'll run some trivia that will run through the chat feature as well. If you do want to talk, and this will probably be more appropriate or applicable in a few sessions' time, you can certainly raise your hand and we can turn the feature on that you're able to talk, but that's probably not going to be appropriate for the first few sessions. So just pop your comments and questions and all of that in the chat for now.
Thanks, Emma. And yeah, within the chat, you have the option to chat to hosts and panelists, or to chat to everybody. And we do like it when you chat to everybody. So if you put your question in, everybody can see it. And so we don't sort of get multiple of the same questions, or people can, say agree or the like. Also a bit of chat, comments about whether you agree with things, not agree with things. So it's good to get a bit of interaction, because the online version, we lose a bit of that, chatting over lunch and networking. And so we do a little bit behind the scenes, but we use the webinar version just to avoid a whole lot of chaos of all the people, you know, forgetting to unmute, forgetting to mute themselves and wandering off, and all the background noise and all of these sorts of things. And it just sort of streamlines things a little bit. So get involved in the chat, and I will be asking you questions and you answer by typing. And as Emma said, we want your questions coming in. Don't wait until I say, does anybody have any questions? Because as you type your question, all right, I'll have moved on, and then we'll be jumping back and forth. So just as you think of it, just put it in there, and Emma will be reading those and I'll be reading them. And if we've already covered it in slides, then we'll just skip it. And Emma mentioned the learning management system. So we certainly, you need to access the learning management system in order to successfully complete this course. So you have to get access to this. So if you haven't got that email from Safe Systems Solutions, if you haven't got access to this, you need to do so. So email Emma if you haven't, or email whoever you got the link to get to where you are now. Email that person. I think it would have always been Emma in this case.
Yeah. Sure
Okay,
was.
in terms of the technical content of this course, I'll run most of it. So my name's Ken Beer. I'm the Principal Engineer at Safe Systems Solutions. Before that, I was with the Victorian Government, VicRoads, for quite a long time in a variety of technical roles in road safety engineering, road design, in project development and the like. I also had a good stint managing road safety auditing for the state and amongst other things. Yeah, so there's a little QR code to my LinkedIn profile. So love to connect with you, because I do like to continue the conversation road safety wise and road safety engineering and auditing and safe system assessing and all online, to keep industry updated on the latest and greatest. So feel free to connect with me, and my contact details are there. So any technical questions throughout the course, get in contact with me. My colleague, Jamie Robertson, he's the technical lead at Safe System Solutions. He will be joining us in one of the modules and presenting some of the detailed design, road safety audit stuff, very technical end sort of stuff, and breaks up you just hearing my voice the whole time. So we look forward to that. Okay, we have a few little tricks up our sleeve to keep you engaged. We know there's a temptation to do the emails and finish off that roundabout design and get onto TikTok or whatever other things. So we've got a few little things. One is Wally the Wombat. This is Wally the Wombat here, Wally the Wombat warning sign. Wally is going to appear in different slides throughout every module, and you've got to keep track of how many times Wally appears. And that will be one of your quiz questions in the module quiz at the end of the module. And so those modules, so every module has a quiz at the end of it, and then we have some assignments as well. So just look out for that warning sign somewhere on slides as we go. But that one doesn't count. Wally count is 0 at the moment. Keep an eye out for Wally. Now, because we've got endorsement of this course from a variety of state governments and national governments around the world and around Australia, we have some requirements that we need to ensure competency of those that we hand out certificates of successful completion to. And some of the requirements are we have to have you attend 4 of the 5 live webinars. We'd love you to attend all 5 live. You've got to view the one you don't attend. Now, if life just gets too chaotic, and we're getting to the time of year where it's extra chaotic, but get in contact with Emma and let her know, and she'll work something out for you. We need you to complete all the tasks that we set, and we need you to get an average 80% for all the quizzes and assignments that we give you. Now that sounds pretty hard. 80% is pretty high, but everything that you'll be quizzed on will have been covered in the content. So if you're attend the sessions and watch them. You shouldn't have any major issues there. And we also offer one-on-one coaching. So if you're really struggling with the assignment or these sorts of things, you just simply shoot Emma an email and say, I'd really like a bit of coaching or a little bit of help with this assignment. Can organise for somebody to have a quick Zoom meeting with me, Teams meeting, or a phone call, and we'll organise that with one of our senior road safety auditors to meet with you and have a chat about that and help you along. I mean, we fail if you fail because we haven't got you up to that level of competency. So we don't want that to happen. So we'll work with you as long as you're willing to work with us to build up that level of knowledge. Now, when I say level of knowledge, this is about the knowledge of the process of road safety auditing. It's not all the technical detail you sort of need to do road safety audits. And I'll get some of that to you, but it'll be much more of the process of road safety auditing, which I'll take you through from a very sort of a level which I assume you have no knowledge of road safety auditing. Now, I know some of you do, and some of you are, got some actual good experience in this space, but I know some are very new to all of this, haven't really heard that term road safety audit. So I'm going to start very basic. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the many lands we're running this training on, pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And as Emma mentioned, we've got quite a variety of lands across Australia where this is running, and that's quite exciting because we need so many more road safety auditors out there across Australia, across the world. So we've got a huge task ahead of us to address the death and serious injury that's happening on the road networks day in, day out. So I think at that stage, we're fairly good. Let's see if anybody wants to give me a thumbs up there that they're happy for me to start. Hopefully you can find your little emojis. Oh, there somebody's, oh, good. Look at the thumbs coming up. Oh, look at that. Fantastic. Gives me confidence that people are actually there. Oh, I got a love heart, and somebody's laughing at me. Yeah, okay. And Len's raised his hand, which I assume is an accidental hand raise, and you don't want to jump in and start presenting. But and Jackie's raised her hand. Fantastic. I assume those are accidental hand raises, but if you do want to speak, maybe type into the chat you'd like to say something. But I'm going to get stuck into the some of the content, Emma. But Emma's monitoring the chat behind the scenes, so type away your questions, your comments, anything you want, and we'll be jumping into that. Emma did mention we give out prizes, and I do give out prizes. I give out prizes for people who answer my questions, and usually the first one to correctly answer it, if it's one where it's correct or not correct, or if you just make a good comment after I ask a question. And what else? Yeah. Oh, Emma mentioned just like 3 minutes before each session, we do a bit of trivia. It could be general knowledge trivia, could be road safety trivia, could be anything. Give out a few prizes, incentivize you to get in, log in early so you're ready to go. So when you successfully complete the course, you get an electronic certificate straight away, but then we post you a hard copy certificate and any prizes you've won along the way. So lots of exciting stuff there. Okay, I'm going to get into it. So road safety auditing. Road safety auditing. We better define what that is, eh? So road safety auditing, this module, I'm going to define it. I'm going to tell you how it fits into a project's life cycle, like an infrastructure project's life cycle. I'm going to differentiate road safety audit with this thing called a black spot investigation, which some of you might have heard of. We're going to look into, well, what is risk and how do we risk rate things? We're going to talk about the SAFE system. Some of you know the SAFE system very well, but we're going to just make sure we're all on the same page there. And flowing from that, we're going to talk about kinetic energy thresholds of different crash types. And then we're going to categorize road safety audit findings. That is a lot to cover in our time. Plus, I want to give you a short stretch break at some point. So I had better keep moving on. Right. This course follows the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6, Road Safety Audit. Now, I was technical advisor to Austroads on this document, and it was just recently released. So it's a 2022 version of it. There's some of the old ones. I've had involvement in those. And so that is essentially what we're going to cover. If you sit down and read the 250 pages of this and comprehend it all and you're happy with it, you kind of don't need to do this course, although we do need to test you that you understood it and you comprehended it and all of that. But this is going to be your content. Now, we have put this guide into the learning management system, but like every Austroads guide these days, you can freely get it from Austroads website when you sign up. The objectives of this course, as I briefly mentioned there, is all about the process of road safety auditing. Okay, to do road safety audits, there is sort of infinite technical and I suppose non-technical things that you might identify that present road safety risk. We can't cover those all in the modules we have. I mean, it is a lifelong learning journey, career-long learning journey, and you find more things and the like. So what we're doing here is covering the process of auditing, but what I will do is ensure that you have some basic skills, okay? Some basic skills in being able to look at a plan, like a design, or look at a bit of road and understand some basic things that will present risk of death and serious injury to our community. We're going to ensure you think through a safe system lens. I'll explain that more later. And then what I'm going to do in my 20 odd years of road safety auditing, I'm going to show you examples of common issues. And, you know, it's surprising that, you know, these issues continue to come up. We try to get standards and guidelines changed in different bits and pieces, but they continue to come up. And so I'll flag some of those with you. And it's a good example of sort of what we're looking for in road safety auditing. We're going to make sure you consider all road users, cyclists, pedestrians, motorcyclists, heavy vehicles, cars, scooters, wheelchairs, the lot. And we're going to encourage road safety auditing and answer any questions you've got. There's a Wally. Wally counts 1, I think, unless I missed one. No more help with Wallies, okay? But the rest of the course. Okay. Now this diagram, there's a lot going on here. Don't get too concerned. I've taken it out of the most recent update to the Austroads guide, but what it's trying to show is that, you know, we've got road infrastructure, and you can think about it as a life cycle. So we've got sort of the planning of our road network. We've got development of programs and projects. Then we have to get into the details of, well, you know, what's the details of what we're going to build and change and upgrade and the like. Then you got to build that. And then, you know, afterwards, you got to have a look at it, monitor it, and then maintain the thing. And we can inject road safety, and we do, in a whole lot of ways. And we've got safety visions, we've got proactive techniques, predictive techniques, reactive techniques. I'm just going to point out here that road safety audits, oh, go down there. They are in the proactive technique category here. They are proactive. We don't need crashes to have occurred in order to do a road safety audit. Okay? And often it's kind of meaningless because it's a new design. They're changing the intersection completely. It's a new road altogether. It's fundamental changes to the road. So, you know, is crash history relevant? Probably not. So it is proactive. We're trying to stop these before they happen. So that's what we'll be looking at and focusing in on. You might have heard of lots of these other terms before: network safety reviews, crash investigations, safe system assessments, different monitoring techniques. Now, I'm happy to talk to any of those, but focus of this course is that box we've got there. So the first thing that I want to say here, and I use this little symbol for some key, points as we go along the journey. People often hear that term road safety audit, and they say, okay, so this is like a financial audit or the like, and you check that everything accords with the standards, the documented standards, and that's what you're checking, like a Disability Discrimination Act audit. Does it meet the code? That is not what a road safety audit is. Okay, it is not a review of standards. Okay, they may play a part in your thinking, but a road safety audit fundamentally says that push standards and guidelines aside, look at a plan, a change to the road or an existing road, and say what could present death and serious injury to the traveling public. I don't care if it meets standards. I don't care if it doesn't meet standards. It's about, does this present risk of death and serious injury to the community? Okay. Now, I do say here, standards, can be helpful. Okay, standards and guidelines often have a good basis of safety, and if we're not meeting them, there are risks. Okay, but I don't want you to get your head into that idea of this is a check against standards, and that is like absolute road safety audit fundamentals. Standards does not necessarily equal safety. And that's because sometimes standards have inherent risk built into them. Sometimes two standards coming together cause a risky situation. Sometimes we're working in a context or an environment where the standards were never thought about for that. Okay, so all of these situations are possible, and our role as auditors is to identify them and make recommendations on how to rectify those, how to lessen that risk. Let me give you an example. Here's a tragic incident, a death of a heavy vehicle driver. I'll give a prize for the person who can tell me what road that is. That's going to be a significant advantage to one state in Australia, actually. By the way, I should say, you do not lose any marks in the live sessions. Answering things, polls, or anything like that, you can get them as wrong as you want. You lose no marks in this course. It's only after the session where you do quizzes and assignments where you're getting marked. Right. What do we got here? Oh, okay. So Stephen was first in with Eastlink, correct. And then we had Joseph and Gary following quickly behind, and Wayne there as well. But Stephen, first prize winner. Emma, note that one down. So we just keep a log of all these prizes. So yeah, it is Eastlink, and a relatively new road in the scheme of things in Victoria, a tollway. Now, as a world-class designers designing the road, ensuring they met standards and guidelines, and they did that. They built the road, and now we've had somebody killed on it. Well, there's been a few people killed on it. So first of all, that makes you scratch your head, doesn't it? Billions of dollars spent on absolutely new infrastructure, and death and serious injury is sort of somewhat commonplace. It's lower than it is on a lot of other roads, but it is somewhat commonplace. Imagine that. Imagine building a rail line and just going, death and serious injury is going to be commonplace on this. Unacceptable. absolutely unacceptable. But for the road network, we just need to, yeah. We're trying to change that in a whole lot of ways. But okay, so let's look at the specifics of this. So we have a road safety barrier system there. It's a wire rope safety barrier system, right? Now we don't exactly know whether it's a test level 3 or a test level 4 system. Let's say it's a test level 4 system. Okay, now I'm straight away getting into some technical detail. And don't worry if you're already lost on that technical jargon I'm using. It's not critical to the course. Okay, but test levels are basically that barrier system was tested in a crash test environment to see whether it contained a vehicle of a certain weight at a certain speed. Now I'll give another prize for the person who can tell me for a test level 4 barrier, TL4 barrier, what weight of vehicle was it tested at 100 kilometers an hour and 25-degree angle here? Have a guess. Yeah, I'll go with a weight. So yeah, tons. Good. Okay. It looks like we do have some technical people in the course and some people who are sort of sitting back and watching a little bit. Gary is our prize winner, 10 ton. Joshua just a little bit behind there. Also put that in. Okay, so it's a 10-ton vehicle under the manual for assessing safety hardware crash. No. 10-ton vehicle. That's the vehicle that they use. Okay, that's a sample vehicle. So that barrier system that was installed, design choice was installed, was never designed to contain a truck of that size and that weight. Okay. So the thing though is that it meets every standard and guideline there is. So we've met all the standards and guidelines, but somebody's been killed. And slightly even more scary than this, if that's possible, is the fact that we have a large gantry and there's possibility that that would have come down across the road and this 100 km/h road with lots and lots of vehicles in the lane. So there's an example of where we would like road safety auditors to be intervening. Now, if you're not somebody who understands the technical nuances of barrier systems and their containment levels and these sorts of things, don't worry too much, because you don't audit by yourself, first of all, and you pull together a team of auditors and you find people with specialist knowledge in these areas if you need. Okay? But your role is to ask questions as an auditor. You know, what's this barrier? Will it contain that? What types of vehicles are there? What speeds are they? What if they go through that barrier? What if they go behind that barrier? What if vehicles come from the other direction? You know, all of these questions that you're asking to see if we can identify this before it happens and either provide a more rigid system, move the gantry, change things around so we significantly lessen the risk of this happening. Let me give you another example here. So this is a design now. We're looking at a design here, and you won't be able to see the detail yet. Some of you will know the area. We've got Chandler Bridge down here. We've got Eastern Freeway down here. And there is an absolutely massive subdivision development thing going on with, you know, shopping center bits and pieces and thousands of apartments and everything like that. And so they need to access onto the road network, don't they? So what they're doing is building a signalized intersection there. There's some duplication works going on for this bit of road, sort of associated with that and some other things. And let's zoom in on this little section also. So we've got the Heidelberg Road intersection up here. Let's zoom in a bit on this. Okay, so this is what the design is, and this is what they're planning. And you will road safety audit at this stage, right? That's a possible stage of auditing. They haven't built anything. These are lines in CAD or on the paper. And what you're doing is looking at these and saying, wonder what crashes could happen if they build it the way that they're proposing here. And then you make suggestions to change this design to lessen the risk. So this one is a common one that I see out there in designs and in the existing road environment. But if we've got a car there where that little square is, it's traveling along, maybe 60 kilometers an hour, maybe a little bit faster. It's a 6 kilometer per hour speed limit. Maybe they're going 65 or something like that. And they're going happily along and they want to continue along straight, and that's the straight lane. And along they go straight, and then, oh, I'm in a turn lane. This is what we term a trap lane. Okay. Just brilliant naming, or whoever named it trap lane, because it's exactly what it is. You would have no doubt found yourself in a trap lane out there in the road environment, and you wouldn't have had the, maybe not the term to use for it, but you're driving along, you go, what? And then you try and get out of there. We know there will be rear end crashes and side swipe crashes in these locations. Okay. It's just, we know there will be, because people are trying to avoid and get out of it. Now, the thing is that this is not directly against any standard or guideline. Okay, there's general guidance in Austroads discouraging trap lanes, but you know, it's sort of recognized that there will be constrained scenarios and this may not be able to be rectified. So our role as road safety auditors is to pick these things up, right? And I give designers credit, like whoever designed this scheme, they would have known there's a trap lane, right? It's not like they accidentally designed this trap lane in there. Sometimes they accidentally stuff things up. I very much doubt it for this one, that this is unknown. But they would have been dealing with all sorts of challenges as a designer. It would have been property access, traffic flow, traffic management. They would have been cost issues, drainage implications, also, you name it. Like, these are tough, complex things to design, right? But our role as road safety auditors sort of is a luxury in a degree. We're free of all those shackles of other challenges, and we simply state things that could result in crashes. And this trap lane will result in crashes. So that's our role, to put it out there. Resolving the issue is not our primary requirement as road safety auditors. Finding the issue is. Now, as a common practice across Australia and New Zealand and the world, we provide recommendations, some ideas for them to consider as they try to lessen the risk of this issue. The only jurisdiction that I'm aware of anywhere that doesn't do that is New South Wales. They just say, nope, just tell us the issue. Don't you tell us how you think it should be fixed. We'll work that out ourselves. But everybody else, the auditors are expected to provide some ideas. They're not binding, but they're certainly ideas that hopefully would help lessen that risk. Now, I've just said that road safety audits are proactive. Okay, so we don't do sort of crash analysis, but I am about to get you to do a little bit of crash analysis. Why am I going to do that? Well, it's not because this is what road safety auditing is, but I want you to start to build a bit of a library of knowledge on what factors, what things in the road environment increase the chance of a crash and the severity of a crash. Okay, and so looking at some crashes can help us to build that understanding. So what I'm going to do now is play you a little crash video. And then I'm going to ask you to have a little bit of a think about that and then type into the chat, what do you think influenced the chance of this crash associated with the environment? Now, you might want to be concentrating on, some of the behavioral issues, but that's not what I'm asking you. All right. I'm asking you what in the road environment, out there, may have influenced the chance that this crash happened. Okay, let's have a look at the crash, and I'll play it a few times and then I'll get you to type it in there. So hopefully that's streaming through for you. We're looking at the back on a back dash cam, and then we move to the front dash cam shortly. Okay. So I'm going to play it again. I'm seeing some people put some ideas in already, but I'm going to play it again. And we're looking for those things in the road environment that influenced the crash. Oh, sorry. Now, remember, there are no wrong answers, really, because it's all your opinion of what could have influenced this. But I've got a few sort of things in mind that I would like to see people putting in there. I'm seeing lots of comments coming in. This is a great group. This is good. Thank you. Let's have a look at this. Okay, here we go. Oh, very interesting already. Okay. So we've had the comment of speed, the speed of approach of vehicle. I think that's a really good, it's an interesting thing to note. The vehicle has come in at speed. Why has it come in at speed? There's some potentially behavioral stuff, but we're not looking at the behavioral stuff. We're looking at what in the environment may have influenced that. So that's good. So some general comments around signage. I'm not sure exactly what we're sort of specifying with signage. Is there not enough signage, too much signage? What are we confusing signage? Now, interestingly, somebody's sort of popped in there, no slow to 40 signs for the roundabout. Is it a roundabout? And this brings up an interesting point. You have to, as a road safety auditor, try to get yourself into the shoes of a driver or a rider or a walker and understand how they may be confused by things or how they may misinterpret or misread the road. Okay, and I think it's reasonable to misinterpret this as a roundabout. Now, if somebody's misinterpreted this as a roundabout on the approach, is that going to change the way they've gone into it? Are we going to see crashes associated with that? Interesting. Vegetation in the median. So do we have enough sight distance? So we've got a comment in there around speed reduction. Now, I'm not sure whether that's the sort of solution, but that's a thing that often comes up in road safety auditing with technical people often. They completely skip the finding the issue part and jump to a solution. So we've got to claw our way back here and be really, really strict with ourselves to say, no, what is the issue here? What are the things that are influencing the likelihood of people crashing or the severity of the crash when it occurs. Not how do we solve this, because that's next steps. Okay, so we've got some commentary around the time of day. We've got some commenting in there around the fact that one sign masks another sign, so you can't see it. The path sign and the give way sign. So these are all things to factor into our consideration. Okay. So one of the big ones that I wanted to go through, Lachlan has put in there. Now, the comment is power lines give the illusion of a straight continuing road. And it's what we would call, what we term generally visual deceit. The road has deceived. And it's interesting. When a vehicle or a driver approaches a road like this and they have to give way or something like that, there's some very subtle things that can convince the occasional driver that the road continues on. And those subtle things include that straight geometry, that straight through. If you have a run of power poles, a run of trees, a run of lights that continues through straight, it really increases the amount of people overshooting the intersection. So what we have when we have crashes at intersections are two categories of crashes. We have overshoot, which is what this driver's done. They've come in and not realized in time that they have to give way and overshot the intersection. The other category is restart. Restart is absolutely knew there was an intersection there, knew they had to give way, either, stopped, made a bad choice, picked a bad gap, these sorts of things, or, knew it was all there, knew what they had to do, slowed down, had a look and decided, very clear decision to go, right? This is an overshoot crash, this one. They haven't known what they're going. There's some confusion as to what is happening here. That visual deceit, that see-through effect, avenue effect, some people call it see-through avenue, it's all within the category of visual deceit. It's one of the many things we would put into the category of visual deceit. It occurs a fair bit out there on our road network. And it is, to me, just a classic example of what road safety auditors are trying to identify. In designs or in the existing road environment. Now, in the existing road environment, it can be very hard to change these things. In a design, it can be easier. Okay, so that's a good comment and prize there for, I think it was Lachlan, wasn't it? Now, I've got so many great things in here. I won't get through everybody's comments, but thank you. Wonderful stuff. I'm just going to zoom through here and see if I can see anything else. Ben's on the same sort of line there with the geometry of the road, having no real thing to slow people down. Yeah, people questioning whether there's enough advanced signage, advanced warning, obscured signage, intersection control, confusion there, geometry. Yes, and people can't stop themselves commenting on the driving behavior. And that is, that's one thing we have to, not focus on in terms of our audits, because we're about the infrastructure, the design, and those sorts of things. Driver behavior is very, it's an important part of road safety, but it's not our role. We can influence driver behavior with infrastructure, though. Don't get me wrong. We can do a whole lot. It's hard to hoon when you do good local area traffic management, by the way. It's impossible to. what near impossible. Okay. I might jump in and talk a little bit more about this, because what I'm seeing there is some people really nicely looking at this road environment, starting to see things that could have influenced this crash. The challenge you've got as a road safety auditor is you've got to do that without seeing the crash. You've got to imagine the crash, predict the crash. And you've got to sometimes do it when you don't even have an intersection there to look at. You've got lines on a bit of paper. You've got to imagine it built. You've got to imagine how people are going to use it. And you've got to imagine how people are going to stuff up. So that, I love it. I think it's just an absolutely fascinating thing to try to do. And you're trying to think about this white ute driver, but you're trying to think about motorcyclists, pedestrians, cyclists going through there. What are the vehicles in the other direction seeing? You've got to unpack all of this. And we were just there trying to focus on what is going to make it more likely for somebody to crash. And I think all the things you're putting in there are worthy of thinking about. Now, a lot of them, I would say, have very, very small impact on the likelihood of crash, okay? This one's interesting, the sign blocking the other sign, which quite a few people pointed out, right? I don't like it. I think it's annoying. It's sign clutter. It's lessening the impact to a degree of that. But to me, that is not a big issue, right? I would point it out in a road safety audit, but in terms of if we fix that, are we going to stop these types of crashes happening at this intersection? Absolutely not. We might lessen it by a tiny little bit, okay? The fundamental geometrics of this intersection is so much more influential. Sight distance, interesting one. That may have some issues, and you'd want to have a look at that on site. You can't tell anything from these sorts of videos on that sort of stuff. Continuation of that lighting, advanced warning, what is the speed environment on the approach, what is the traffic control, is it confusing people into thinking it's a roundabout or not on the approach, is that changing their behavior? And I haven't even got into cyclists, motorcyclists, pedestrians, navigating through this at all. But we're thinking there a lot about what is the chance people are going to crash. But that's not where we stop as auditors. We then say, now when they crash, how bad is it going to be? It's very different if we have a scrape or a little fender bender compared to somebody is killed or somebody has an acquired brain injury or quadriplegia or paraplegia. We have these huge spectrums of severity in road crashes. And so this one is fascinating because we've had the crash, they've hit the pole, right? These two vehicles have had what I'd call a secondary crash into this pole. This pole's sort of broken away, hasn't it? It's interesting. So that pole was designed to break away. And it is designed like that as an energy management device. Okay, an energy management device. And Ahmed has put in there, it's a frangible pole. So prize for that, because that is absolutely correct. So frangible is that word that we use in industry to mean break away on impact, frangible. Now, I do a lot of, in my time I have done, and I continue to do a lot of community consultation and chatting with the public about infrastructure and roads and designs and the like. And I don't use the term frangible. I did once. I had a lot of people looking at me very strangely. But frangible is the technical term we use, and there are different types of frangible poles. And this is a slip-based pole. A slip-based pole is a wonderful engineering device that has a shear plane. So if it's struck at the bottom, it shears off. The wind load up the top creates torque, and the bolts take that and the collar. Brilliant, just brilliant engineering. Okay, so that's a slip-based pole. You can see here, Max, one of our senior auditors, he's just checking the height of some recently installed slip-based poles, just to make sure they're at the right height. Because if they're too high, and they do often get installed too high, we lose a whole lot of value out of it, don't we? Because vehicles come in and they get snagged on the base, which is not frangible. Too low is not as bad, but starts to get into that point where it doesn't function as well as it should because it doesn't have the ability to shear as much. So that's a slip-based pole. And so you might, as a road safety auditor, get a plan that looks like this amongst the design set you're asked to audit. And it'll have all the lighting that's coming in, and that might be page 55 of your 100-page design set, and it'll say, well, okay, we're going to do this is going to be rigid pole, this one's going to be slip-based, rigid, and you've got to read all of this, and you've got to understand it, you've got to predict it, and you've got to say, okay, this is good, this is I'm understanding that. So in this situation, relative, probably showing my age by what I'm about to say, relatively new intersection. And if you are asked to audit this at the design stage, so it hasn't been built yet, you're going to look at it on the paper, and they said we're going to do a slip-based pole on this one because we're worried about vehicles leaving the road and hitting that pole, and we don't want it to be rigid and hard. All right, we want it to break away so the driver and the passengers of the vehicle aren't as injured with that energy transfer. What might you, and I'll give a prize out for this, what might you think as a road safety auditor in that situation? Any ideas? Okay, so I think it's Kerry there. I only seen part of the name there. Where is the pole going to land? Emma, you'll be able to find out exactly who that is. If it's Kerry, hi Kerry.
Yep, absolutely.
Where is the pole going to land? What a just brilliant road safety audit question. Okay, so yes, we're thinking good on them for the designers for thinking, okay, let's try to make this as safe as possible for the drivers. But we do need to think about, where is this going to go? Is it going to land in areas where pedestrians are waiting? Is it going to take out power lines, tram lines? Is it going to fall onto other vehicles and other areas? So, we're broadly holistically thinking about it. And there's a little bit of a rule of thumb we use for this. And there's some more specific guidance around this. But in low-speed environments, right, we use this thing, right, which is another type of frangible pole, but it's not a slip-based one. I will give a prize out if anybody can tell me what the name of that one is. That's a little bit of a harder one. It's a different type of frangible pole. Okay, so, but what it does is it envelopes the vehicle in a sense. Okay, it stays within that general area. Okay, a slip-based pole will break away and move, right? So in low-speed environments, if you decide a frangible pole is what should be there, you would use an impact absorbing. I just gave away the answer there, didn't I? I don't think anybody put it in, so no prizes for that now. Impact absorbing. In higher speed environments, you'd use a slip-based pole. in some low speed environments, you may analyze it. Well, Jason got it in. Yeah, we'll give Jason a prize. It was close enough to the timing of me saying it that it came through. You may decide in some road environments that it's okay to have a rigid pole because the speed is low enough that it is not going to seriously injure or kill the occupants of the vehicle if they hit a rigid pole. So there's good traffic calming around, or the speed environment is all generally so low that rigid poles are okay. So the point being here that you've got to always contextualize things as a road safety auditor. Contextualize, contextualize, contextualize. So some common road safety audit findings around slip-based poles, particularly, where will they fall? That's especially often in the design phase. And then what's at the height of them when they're, you've just been installed and you're doing a post-opening road safety audit check or the like, or existing roads, and you can check that. Now, throughout the course, and Emma will probably show you at the end in the learning management system, you can get the copy of these slides, and then we've got these little hyperlinks to sort of more information on some of these topics if you want to read a little bit more or get a little more insight. We do these safe system snippets, and these are sort of topics that we've taken and put some more information to. Now, road safety audit is proactive. If you've got an area that has a crash history and you're in depth looking at the crash types, the time of day of the crashes, the direction of the crashes, the vehicle types, you are doing what we would call a black spot investigation. Or around the world, it's termed a few different things, crash reduction study or the like. But when you are analysing in detail the crashes, you're not doing a road safety audit. A road safety audit is looking at the existing environment or the future environment and predicting what's going to happen. Now, a question that often comes up is, well, should we look at the crash history as part of a road safety audit? And the answer to that is it's up to you. Now, I have worked with auditors who refuse to look at the crash history, right? Absolutely flat out refuse. They say that is irrelevant, okay? So in that context, I'm talking about a design stage road safety audit. So they've got a design of a new roundabout, for example. It's currently a give-way controlled intersection. They're looking at the roundabout. They say, what possible value would I get from looking at the crash history of a completely different intersection form? Right? But I do have worked with road safety auditors who do look at the crash history in that situation, and they justify that by saying, well, I'll get an understanding, I suppose, of what vehicle types are in crashes here. Are there pedestrians involved? Are there this? So they're trying to use it for contextualizing the environment, the area. My preference is not to really look at it. I would maybe look at it at the end just to check there wasn't something that I completely, threw me completely, like there was quite a history of pedestrian crashes in a rural area or something like that. But I don't like it to drive my thinking because I'm predicting the future. And Ahmed's put in that comment, if you look at the crash history, it would influence your examination of the future road design. That's right. Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head there. And that's why I would only maybe do it right down near the end when I'm pretty much got myself sorted with my team audit team about, well, what are we worried about here? But it's up to you. Austroads just dodges and weaves this particular point, does not answer it whatsoever. A little bit of it. Did you know that road safety audits have a benefit cost ratio of 36 to 1 at the design stage and 6 to 1 at the existing road stage. So, you know, if you go out and do a road safety audit of existing area, 6 to 1. I mean, these are huge benefit cost ratios. Like every dollar you invest, you get $36 return on a design stage audit, or $6 return on existing. You'd be putting all your money into that for sure. Give a prize for the person who can tell me why the difference, why design stage so much better benefit cost ratio than existing road stage, even though existing road stage is absolutely awesome at 6. Any thoughts on why that might be the case? We will have a stretch break shortly. So, it's a good group.
It is a good group. Lots of great responses there, Ken.
And I'm torn as to who to give it to. It's again, I'm only seeing starts of people's names on my little screen here. I think it's Richard there with early intervention, which is kind of right. And Lachlan's then come in and fleshed that out into what I was sort of looking for, which is that, hey, it is a lot cheaper to change some lines on a design than it is to build new stuff or rip out stuff that's been built and change it around. So you can do that a lot more cheaply. Occasionally it costs a little bit more, but you know, the benefits you can get are huge. So maybe Richard Price there, I think, in quickly with early intervention and early answering. I think that this is a good time for just a quick 3-minute, fill your coffee up, fill your water up, have a stretch, and we'll get back into it in 3 minutes.
See you soon.
Shortly. Just reading there, lots of people answering things correctly, just not quite as quick as others on the keyboard or the internet connection. Lots of opportunities to win prizes though throughout. So let's get back into it. Now, what is a road safety audit? What is a road safety audit? Well, let's have a look at this. And I'm going to use here the 2022 version to define it. Although I'm not going to read all of that out. You can read that yourself if you want. It's in there. It's on page 4. It's pretty long, sort of explaining bits and pieces of it. I'm going to talk through that over the next series of slides. But I'm going to take this particular segment of it out, which has sort of remained true for many, many years. It's a formal examination of a future road or traffic project or an existing road or road-related area in which an independent qualified team reports on the project's fracture potential and actual safety performance respectively. Okay, some key words here. It is formal, okay? Road safety audits are not a little, you know, just go out, have a look at the site, casual, write a little note, write an email, there's your audit. No, it's a formal examination. There is a process to follow. It has 12 steps. We'll go through them. 11 steps, 12 steps. It changed recently. It used to be 8 steps and they added more steps. But formal examination. Future road or traffic project or an existing road or road-related area. Independent. You cannot road safety audit your design. If you're a designer, you can't road safety audit your design. You can't road safety audit the project you are project manager of, even if somebody else designs it. And so you are non-independent. Okay? You need to have that absolute independence from being influenced by other aspects of the project. And also the idea that you can't proofread your own letters and things like that. I mean, how many times do you do that? You write a letter or write it, you read it, you go, yep, it's perfect. You hand it over to the person next to you. They read it, they find mistakes, they hand it back. You're like, wow, how did I miss that? Well, you're too close to it. That's that same one as well. Qualified teams, right? I'll take you through what all of this, more about that, but are people qualified? You know, have they done this course? Do they have the right experience? And crash potential, future crashes is what we're thinking of. Okay, so a question here around independence. Does it include the same organisation? Would you consider a council Vic Road surveillance officer inspector as independent? Okay, good question. Good questions. The second one's easier, and I will say yes, they are independent. The council, well, sorry. I'm just thinking if the surveillance officer has had that particular involvement in the design of the project and the like, then they're not independent. But if they are sort of coming in there as the person to just check the design was done, the project management are all, and they are in there just checking, then they have that independence. The Austroads Guide is very open to the idea, or more open to the idea of council and state. So local government road authorities or local road authorities and state road authorities and the like undertaking audits on their own existing roads. Okay. Certainly not if they're project manager of the design or the like, or the project within the organisation. That's not. But within an organisation gets a bit messy. So, and I give the example of big consultancy, and they've got offices in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane, and they say, well, we're going to use the Brisbane office to audit the Sydney office's design. Okay, they're independent of it, and Austroads discourages this. Okay, and discourages it in the sense that there is somewhere in that there is influence or potential influence, right? And I do say it discourages that. Okay. I say it discourages. It doesn't flat out say you cannot do it. But what you would need to do is have some very clear, documented, signed off walls of independence and all of this. But if I was in court expert witnessing, I would just say, ABC multinational design consultants did the design, did the audit. I just come back to this and say, they're not independent. They're the same organisation. They're the same private organisation, and Austroads doesn't deal with that. They say councils, local governments who are managing existing roads can look at their existing roads, but the design process is all different. So I just sort of flag that and put that out there, that you need to be pretty sort of ironclad on how you do that, how you do that. So yeah, conflict of interest.
And there's been some questions around that coming through the chat, Ken, as well. So I hope that answers that in relation to the same organisation. There's also a question, would you consider a council / Vic Road surveillance officer / inspector as independent?
Yeah, so as I was sort of alluding to on that one was that if it's existing road, absolutely, that's pretty well covered in Austroads, so that's fine. So a council officer, or a Vic Road surveillance officer or the like, looking at existing infrastructure, can do a road safety audit, and that is seen as independent of it. If a developer's doing work and the surveillance officer is out there looking at it, they can do a road safety audit on that because they are independent of the design, which is what sort of you're really going at, independent of the design. Now, that would be a weird situation because the surveillance officer often has to do lots of other things. And so they would have to have this particular specific process in place for auditing, and then they'd have their other things that they're kind of doing. But in theory, that's okay. It's that one where multinational consultants or consultants in the same office, and they say, oh, well, no, they were, my colleague over there wasn't involved in the design of this, and so they're doing the audit. And then I go, well, yeah, okay, but you got the same boss. And if the timeframes are running behind on this, or what they're going to suggest will cause you design issues, there's a pretty big conflict of interest there, and I would heavily discourage that kind of operation.
There's a follow-up to the original within the same organization, independent. Same organization, different team, I think, within the state government.
Same organization, different. So yeah, government's a little bit different in that sense, that Austrade seems to feel that there's less potential for as much conflict of interest. I'm not sure actually why that is, but anyway, that's that's possible as well. But independence in auditing isn't usually a hard thing to find and to get.
And one last question, and there's been a few comments as well, just within the context of the independent section, is there's too much conflict of interest, and people have seen this before. Also, it may depend on the size of the local council.
Yep.
And one last question is the difference between an RSA and a design review.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. So a design review is a common technique to, ensure that we get things right in the design, and then somebody, you hand your design over to somebody else, and they review and they check you did, logical calculations and made appropriate decisions. And there is overlap between what a road safety audit will pick up and what a design review will pick up. But there's certainly things in a design review that a road safety auditor would not care about whatsoever. And I think Jamie's going to show you a couple of those. I mean, things like, I don't know, it can be actually quite a raft of things. I mean, often some drainage concerns about flooding into properties and those things, sort of things. The road safety auditor doesn't care about that. Like, if you're an auditor and you pick that up, you might note it to them and say, hey, by the way, you're probably going to flood that property. But that's not a road safety audit issue, is it? But it's certainly a design issue, because we're only focused on safety issues. So those sort of things. But also there's a huge raft of things that often are found by auditors which are not specific in that design review. Some design reviewers, people who do design reviews, also sort of get into that road safety audit mold as well. So you get a bit of overlap there, but there's a difference. All right, I better keep ticking along because we've got a bit to cover. And Emma, I think you're going to give out assignments at the end of this, are you?
I sure am.
Oh, I better go quick. Okay. The SAFE system. I don't need to spend long on this because it's so well entrenched around Australia now. But the SAFE system fundamentals are, and this is the approach that national, state, local governments have all adopted for the way we're going to address road trauma. And it says that we acknowledge people are going to make mistakes. We're going to try and minimize the mistakes, but we need to manage them when they occur. So we need to think about the severity of crashes. Okay, we're not just going to try and stop crashes. We've got to think about the severity of the ones that still do happen. And we've got to think about that within the context of how much force can the human body handle. And we, as designers, auditors, managers of the road system, we have a responsibility. So there is no more just blaming the driver, the walker, the rider, and saying that was inappropriate, they didn't stop, they fell asleep, they were texting. Right? Well, no, we say we want to do things to try and discourage that and to try to minimize that. But we need to look at why is our system letting this happen or letting it result in death or serious injury. And we've got the vehicles we can use, we've got the road users themselves, we've got the speed and the roads. So we're aiming at no death and serious injury on the road network. That's a future aspiration. And it's not going to happen tomorrow or in the next 10 years, but at some point we should be aiming at that. People make mistakes. There's a shared responsibility, and people are vulnerable. Quick quiz, Emma, and I think a poll should pop up on your screen shortly if we have it. And then remember, you're not being marked on this. This is just to consolidate our thinking and get us ready to keep ticking along.
Has it come up there?
Yep.
Yeah, excellent.
Going to go 5 more seconds because I need to move on very shortly. And yeah, have a guess at it. Don't worry too much. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Emma, let's end that poll and we'll share the results. Let's have a look. Road safety audit is another name for check against standards. False. Everybody's on that. You can audit your own design. Again, no, you can't. You're not independent. Well done. Okay, which of the following is not considered a formal element of the safe system? So I didn't spend long on this, but safe attitudes, no, that's so everybody said that's correct. Yeah, no, it's we'd love everybody to have safe attitude. It's not a formal element of the safe system. Which of these is not a common principle of the safe system? And again, most people are onto this. So elimination of mistakes on the road network, that's not a principle because we recognize we're dealing with humans. Humans make mistakes, right? What we're looking to do is minimize and manage mistakes. And Usain Bolt, and I asked this one a lot, and other people use this analogy as well. Usain Bolt crossed the finish line 44 kilometers an hour. And just stop that, Emma. And why do I ask that? Well, because that analogy goes in that we park a car at the end of Usain Bolt's lane and he comes running in and he hits it 44 kilometers an hour. And will he survive? Well, yeah, he's going to survive because he is like the Hulk of a human and he can withstand a lot of force. If we pick any of us up, we fling us at the car at 44 kilometers an hour, we're unlikely to survive, or we're less likely to survive. And certainly we pick up our parents or our grandparents, we throw them in a car, they're not going to survive. There's more frailty there. This curve we see here is actually the chance of death for pedestrian being struck by a vehicle at this collision speed, not the speed limit, just the speed of impact. This is biomechanics of injury. And you see there, around 30 kilometers per hour, things go really bad, really quick. So there's the great man himself. He comes up a little bit higher up the curve, right? But this is for all of society. So, we're thinking about frail people. We're thinking about there's freak accidents where people survive very high speed crashes as well. But really that 30 kilometers per hour is seen as that point things go really bad and really quickly, exponentially kick up. This is what we're designed to withstand. They're the, he's okay. He broke some ribs. He came back the next year, won the gold medal. That's what the human body evolved to withstand, running into trees, running into solid stuff off the pace of our own legs. obviously things got a lot faster when motor vehicles were invented. We have this data for other crash types. We've got side impact crashes where bullet vehicle speed into target vehicle, we'd call that the bullet vehicle. Bullet vehicle speed at about 50 kilometers per hour is where things go really bad really quickly for the target vehicle occupant. And for head-on crashes, we see that 70 kilometers per hour is where things go really bad really quickly. And that's 70 for each vehicle, right? Now, that is actually just a 70 kilometer per hour crash for the individual occupants of those vehicles. It's the same as running into a wall at 70 kilometers an hour. If two vehicles, same weight, same mass, same speed, hit each other there. And there's a good Mythbusters episode on that, which we could share with you, where they crash vehicles into each other and into walls. It's to prove that with accelerometers and like. Possibly got some snippets there for you if you need. Yes, Emma.
There's a question. How was this curve developed?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work going on in redeveloping these curves and in across the world, and a lot of work out of Centre for Automated Safety Research in the University of Adelaide. These were originally developed out of Europe, and we still sort of use these ones as a general guide. And they were developed based, well, summarizing very quickly, trying to summarize this. In Europe, there's eCall, which is when you crash, when your car crashes, it automatically calls emergency services and says, I'm a car, I'm here, and I just crashed into something, and I crashed into something in this manner. So come expecting, acquired brain injuries, or so I had head injuries, or I've rolled over, so I expect spinal injuries. So that's how, and that's a mandated thing in cars in Europe. So they basically just took the eCall data and the hospitalization data, linked the two. They knew the crash type, they knew the speed because the car told the eCall told what speed it all happened at, and linked those two data sets, and that's how they got to it. That 10% line becomes really important. And it's where things go really bad really quickly. Now we're going to use these. So I've put a table here with some more speeds and more crash types. And we're going to come back to that shortly. I'm moving along a bit quicker now. But the old road safety audit model, which was a bit easier, a bit simpler, was simply just to find issues in the design or in the existing road environment, identify those hazards, risk assess them, and then make recommendations. And as I say, if you're in New South Wales, you didn't even need to do that last one. What we do now is we still find those issues, we still risk assess them, but we consider those tolerances to physical force that I was just talking about. So if we say, oh, I'm worried about a right angle crash here, okay, then we say, well, what speed will that happen at? And is that within those tolerable levels? We still don't want that crash to happen, but if it's within those tolerable levels, we're a bit more sort of accepting of it. We don't want it, and we'll try and get rid of it, but nonetheless, that's what we're thinking about. Then you make your recommendations, but we also do a little bit of categorizing, because the recommendation to put up a warning sign is very different to something that will actually slow vehicles, like have a physical alteration in the geometry, or intersection control, or raised platforms, or these sorts of things. So we need to sort of calibrate, well, how effective kind of is this going to be? So I'm going to run through an example for you now. I'm going to do a few things here. So it's sort of an example of how this whole road safety auditing thing plays out. And it also shows you how to word road safety audit findings. And that's going to be very important, because one of the things you will be marked on is how you word your findings. So you've got to find the issue, you've got to identify it, but then you've got to write it up in a clear manner, because the people receiving the report need to clearly understand what your issue is. So here's an example. Okay, we've got an intersection, new intersection being proposed, this brand new intersection. Okay, it's on a high-speed road, 100 kilometer per hour road, or 80 or 100, it's a high-speed road. We've got a left turn lane, we've got a right turn lane, we've got a Splitter island being proposed here. Okay. The issue that, as an auditor, I'm concerned with here is what I call a dynamic visual obstruction, more commonly termed a masking, masking issue. And I'm worried here that a driver sort of propped here, waiting to turn, will be looking up this way. And if there's a large vehicle, here, their sight line is going to be blocked, isn't it? So there might be another vehicle coming along here that they'll miss. So let me show you that. I mean, here's a real world example of it. You can see here, we've got an intersection, we've got a left turn lane, we've got a truck coming along. You can see that white vehicle just next to it. Okay, let's go a little bit further forward. So the white vehicle is there, it's clear in view, and the vehicle's there. So this driver may say, all right, as soon as that white vehicle goes, I'm going to go. If they did that, this other silver vehicle here had just been masked the whole time by the truck. And, there's potential for a crash there. Now, again, there's nothing in standards or guidelines that tells you can't do a left turn lane like this, except for if you're in Queensland now, because they've sort of said you have to do a slightly different thing. Anyway, so here's the audit finding. It talks about the crash that could happen and the issue. But one thing I want to highlight there is there's a diagram. Okay, a snip of the design, a little bit of that. That diagram means that if I got this road safety audit report, I wouldn't even need to really read it. I know exactly what the issue is. I know exactly what this issue is now. But you can see in there some words, the intersection of this and this and this. Left turn lane creates a dynamic visual obstruction to motorists of the whole line of vehicles. And this increases the likelihood of right through side impact crashes. So it's specified a crash type. And then it's talking a little about risk factors here. The volume of vehicles on the road is low, so there's less likelihood of that. But the volume of large vehicles turning left is high. So that's going to create that. Down here it says the design is consistent with current Austroads and VicRoads design guidance. The auditors still believe this presents a safety issue. So there you go. The auditors are just flat out saying that, going, yeah, okay, we're not saying you're not meeting standards and guidelines here, but we're still concerned. Interesting. What I've done though here is I've tried to create a formula or a recipe for writing a road safety audit finding. Now, this is one that I don't know why it took me so long to come to this, because I've read and looked at, thousands of road safety audit reports in my time, and I look at them and I go, that's a good finding. That's not a good finding. Partly it's like, what is the specifics of the issue? But it's partly how clearly have I been able to understand it. And I'm like, what is it about them? Anyway, so I've broken it down here. The first thing is to write up the issue, sort of clearly spell out, okay, at this intersection here, right, vehicles using the left turn lane may create a dynamic visual obstruction for motorists at the hold line looking for through vehicles. Then you specify the crash, even if it is so obvious in your mind what the crash is, right? You still write it. This increases the likelihood of right through side impact crashes involving vehicles turning out of the side road. Okay? Specify the crash. And if you do not specify the crash, it's not a road safety audit issue, because we're about preventing or lessening the severity of crashes. Then you put in any factors that may make the risk go higher or lower. This could be worse at night, this could be worse in wet conditions, the volume of traffic, the speed, these sorts of things that may influence how you ended up risk rating this. And then if there are standards and guidelines that apply, you can put that in. So if you've identified something, it doesn't conform with the standards, you're worried about it, say it, right? That's fine. So then you need to go to risk rating these things and say, okay, what is the risk now? And we use a fairly stock standard risk assessment matrix. And so risk is the chance something bad is going to happen multiplied by how bad that is, the severity, the magnitude of badness. Okay, what's the risk of recession? Okay, the risk of recession is what's the chance we go into recession, and how deep a recession are we going to go into? What's the health risk or environmental risk or road safety risk? What's the chance of the crash? And how bad is it going to be when it does happen? So in the latest version, I created this of Austrode's Part 6. I changed the matrix because the last one that had been there for many years annoyed me and annoyed many people actually. So we fixed it or changed it. So we're saying here, what is the chance that this crash? You've visualized, you've predicted, hey, this crash could happen. But how frequently is it going to happen? Okay. Is it going to happen like every quarter we will see that dynamic visual obstruction crash happen? Or are we only going to see it like every 7 years or more? But then when it does happen, what are we into here? Is it just going to be minor, insignificant property damage? Or are we talking about people being killed? And so what you do is you maybe say, well, I really don't think that all of those things are going to conspire together to actually give us a crash at speed more than once every 7 years. But when it does happen, gee, it's going to be bad. It's going to be up here in the either serious or fatal. We go high, or maybe we go medium, right? Now you notice this big line here. What's the big line? The big line is saying, if it's to the right of that line, these are our safe system concerns, because we're trying to prevent death and serious injury. That's our number one thing to do. We don't want things left of the line, right? Or we want them down in negligible, if anything. But yeah, a high risk here is more acceptable than a high risk here. Now, you definitely be wanting to address this, but that's the FSI. So then you put this in there and you say, well, that's the likelihood is rare, the severity, serious, the risk results in medium. The FSI is to indicate this is to the right of the line. We're in the stuff that needs to be, really needs to be rectified. And then we come into the idea of saying, okay, now what we want to do is make some recommendations. We've identified the issue, we've risk rated it. Now, how can we lessen that risk? And this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky. And this is probably going to be one of the hardest things for you to get your head around. Because we come up with ideas. And for that one we were looking at, there's so many ideas. You could have warning signs, you could have, separate the turn lane, you could, reconfigure the hold line, you could put a roundabout in, you could signalize it, you could, the list goes on. So you need to use a bit of judgment to understand, well, which ones could be appropriate. And then for anything you put forward as an idea, you need to say, this is either a primary treatment or a supporting treatment. Now, I'm going to draw little handles on these because these are buckets, okay? And they are buckets full of treatments, right? And the reason I do that is because I don't want you to think of primary as this is my number one recommendation. Okay, it is just primary categorization in safe system. Yeah, there are things in here in certain contexts, roundabouts, raised platforms, this and that. And in here, there's things like signs, lines, blah, blah, blah. You might take a few out of each. You might take multiple primary treatments. You might take only supporting treatments. Okay. So primary is road planning and design management considerations virtually eliminate the potential for fatal and serious injuries occurring associated with foreseeable crash types. Supporting treatments are road planning, design, and management that improve the overall level of safety associated with foreseeable crash types, but are not expected to virtually eliminate. And they don't change the ability for a primary to go in the future. Now, this is confusing for a lot of people. What I'm going to do is actually point you at a different document here, and it's the Safe System Assessment Framework, because the Safe System Assessment Framework has what is in each of these buckets. Just lists and lists and lists of treatments and saying that's primary, that's supporting 4 different crash types. And we're going to give you lots of practice at this throughout the next 5 modules. So you'll get lots of feedback and you'll get your head around it, and I'll give you lots of examples.
Ken, there's a question around likelihood. Can't this be argued depending on how people perceive the likelihood? Some people are super conservative and some others aren't.
Yep. And there is a degree of subjectivity to likelihood, especially in road safety auditing. And, you know, you get better as a road safety auditor, I think. If you are involved in, road safety, you will have a good feel for how often death and serious injury happens and the like. The one thing I do flag is that new auditors over risk rate things dramatically. And the reason for that is that you visualize this in your mind and you can't get it out of your mind, and you think it's going to happen, right? And the reality though is that, if you look at something like pedestrian crashes in the state, and we see, 40 deaths a year, that's absolutely horrific, don't get me wrong. But that's across like Victoria, all of Victoria, all intersections. So if somebody in a road safety audit is to put down that they are expecting death to occur to a pedestrian quarterly at that intersection due to this design specific issue, like you've just over 5 years, you've done the whole state's pedestrian death at the one location. Like you can kind of calibrate your risk rating in that sense. Because you've got to think about that issue contributing to that. So you'll get feedback again on how you've risk rated things. But here we go. We see, the way that this is presented. Implement measures to reduce the speed and or angle of impact at this location. This could be achieved with a roundabout, primary treatment, virtually eliminate death and serious injury for right angle crashes. If this cannot be implemented, measures to improve sight lines at locations such as increasing the offset of the left turn lane. Supporting. Why is that supporting? We've opened up the sight lines. Well, it's supporting because it hasn't virtually eliminated this crash type, right? It's lessened the chance of it because they can probably see a bit better, but that crash could absolutely still occur. Relocate the hold line forward, provided it can be done so safely. So again, trying to open up sight lines. It's doing an audit of a design with a colleague in a similar scenario, and we had one concern associated with bikes going through the area. The other was exactly that dynamic visual obstruction issue, and we sort of, in amongst our recommendations, we're playing around with the idea of, a bike lane through there to open that sight line, and everything worked. Everything sort of helped out a bit. Still can have crashes where vehicles come out here and get struck. Less likely though, because nice sight lines are open. To be categorized as a primary treatment, it either needs to address the consequence of the crash or, virtually eliminate it, but you need to understand that people make mistakes. So as I say, this is probably going to be a thing that you need to practice, you need to see examples of, and I'll continue to show them and you'll continue to get your head around it. We always in a road safety audit then put this, blank column responsible officer, because this is handed over to a client and they should respond to this. They should write notes. Do I agree with it? Yes. and you know, can't afford the roundabout, scope's locked in. So instead we're going to do, well, so instead we're going to do the offset of the turn lane or whatever it is. Yeah. Now I'm going to jump through this because I don't think I've got time to give this next example, but you know, you can immediately see there how easy it is for us to know what the issue is because there's a snip and there's a point out and it's going, oh, 2.9 meter turn lane. It's pretty narrow. And then you can see, you know, the issue, the risk rating, and the like. Oh, there's a Wally sneaking in there. Oh, I gave him more help, didn't I? 2.9. So, yeah, poor example of the finding wording here, you know, right turn bay is too narrow. Which right turn bay? Where? What's the issue with that? What, you know, what crashes are we going to expect? This is better. This is in your notes. You can read these yourself. You know, right turn from main road to side road is too narrow. Concern is increased side swipe potential, rear end crashes. And Ostro's guide to the road design, which would be minimum 3.3. This one's better. We see the snip, we know where it is, we know the location, and it's broken down into those specific recipes or categories. What's the issue? What's the crash that could happen? What are the risk factors? And what are the standards and guidelines if applicable? So just a few things. Road safety audit is not, so you can see them there. I won't go and read them all, but you know, a few that sort of jump out there. You don't rank projects with road safety auditing to say, oh, you know, this one's better than this one, better than this one. That's not what it is. Don't check technical standards. Not that just usual quality assurance process that should happen in organizations. Not a crash investigation, not the periodic maintenance inspection either. That's a different thing. I think that's mainly it. The really important thing here, and I mentioned it before, is that the auditor's job is to find problems. Auditors are problem finders. And one of the things that a lot of new auditors, because they're often, you know, engineers or technical officers or technical people, they just straight away identify and solve all in one hit, right? And they jump to, even in the written audit finding, telling you, they say, yeah, this intersection should be a roundabout. You're like, whoa, how do we get there? Like, that is way down in, okay. What is the issue? Clarity on the issue is key. Now, we talked about audit and we talked about design review there, and you can see the overlap. Safe system assessment sort of overlap things as well, and we're starting to see more and more that a safe system assessment and a road safety audit are coming together. They're still not the same. That's a different beast, and that can be used really well to compare projects and a few other things. Other terms, safety and design, there's a little bit of that filters into auditing and other things, but that's, you know, can it be built safely? Can it be maintained safely? Can it be decommissioned safely? A bit more OH&S style stuff. And DDA, so Disability Discrimination Act, and that, you know, drifts in there a bit into auditing. But I'll talk about that when we get to pedestrians as a distinct element.
Ken, there's a question. Do we need to consider EDD/D in RSAs?
No, I mean, like extended design domain and the like is, that's a design thing to deal with, right? We don't care whether it's Met standards, Met guidelines, or you're doing EDD, or you're doing, as an auditor, you would probably read their design exception reports to get an understanding of where they've, you know, had to compromise for one reason or how they're justifying their risk management. But it's to a degree irrelevant. You just look at the design and say, I believe that is going to, you know, present death or serious injury. Now, if they've gone through a really good design exception process and you know, they're all comfortable with it, and you identify it as well, you know, they might reconsider things, or they might say, no, we've considered all that, and we're, as an organization or a road authority, we are going down this track. Thank you for your comment. But no, it's not really, that doesn't kind of matter. Part of your context, that report may be useful. Okay, what can be audited? Anything that interfaces with a road or a public path, you know. So car parks can be audited, but roads, major projects, small projects, traffic management schemes, cycleways, shared paths, it's all able to be audited. Now, just wondering, Emma, whether I've got time for this. I'm going to do this very quickly, Emma. Get ready to allocate them, but I really want to do this because I think this is a very good example.
Sure.
Here's a road, and council is saying, right, we're just going to formalize this road. We're going to seal it, and we're going to formalize the intersection. Okay, and they said, and there they go, they did it. But in that, they said, well, we don't need to do road safety audits because we are just improving things, you know. We're improving everything here, isn't it? Nice curving, it's going to improve the intersection, it's going to improve the road here. So, and we've met everything in the IDM or the infrastructure design manual, and everything's good. So no road safety audits were undertaken. Prize for the person who can tell me, I suppose, why, or what was the sort of potential, you know, thing that increased the chance of crashes, so much so that there were sort of 7, or there was deaths here and quite a bit of serious injury as well since they did this, and it significantly shot up in the amount of death and serious injury. Yeah, lots of really good stuff there. Emma, I'm going to have to let you try and work out who was sort of quickest and first onto it, but because there's lots of good stuff in there, and lots of good points. So some people are making the point about vehicles approaching here faster because now it's sealed, and that's a really good point. It's not the particular one because that we're interested in. The basic one was, and I did see it in there from a few people, vehicles approaching here, it's actually really clear that it's not, the road didn't continue because it's a very different road environment. As soon as they sealed it, that approach just looked like it went straight through. See-through effect again. Overshoots. That's the new road that we're on. Don't worry about the burnout marks. That's the one. I just thought it goes straight through. And it was, but before it's kind of very clear that it ended. Runner power poles, runner trees, straight alignment. So the importance of auditing is huge, right? And even when you think, no, we're just improving everything here, having that independent check, that independent set of eyes to maybe identify some of these potential things can be so valuable. And if that had happened, you know, there's potential for lots of interventions at this intersection to try and lessen that. Could have been, you know, staggered T, so, you know, offset it there. Could have been splitter island to splitter island would be great here. Could have maybe progressed a roundabout, very expensive, but, you know, maybe the auditors would have helped things along. Could have had advanced warning features, could have slowed vehicles on these roads. I mean, I can give you 1,000 ideas on how we can lessen risk here. It's just that nobody even looked at that. And we had members of our community killed and seriously injured when this so-called upgrade happened. Okay, so types of road safety audits. In my last 3 minutes here, 2 minutes. You can audit before anything is built. So these are design feasibility, preliminary, detail. You can audit while they're doing the construction. Is the traffic management right? Is it, is it causing risks? Just before they cut the ribbon, or once it's open, or existing roads. And this is where I'll pick up next time, but we've got feasibility stage audits, big picture stuff, big planning style audits. Maybe you get a little bit more detail, but you're sort of really thinking about, is that the right intersection form? Where are people going to go? You might get concepts, preliminary designs on aerials or survey bases, and you'll be looking at more detail. You'll get the full detailed design set for a detailed design audit, the long sections, the cross sections, the drainage plans, the sign plans, the pavement plans. You'll be looking, pouring through hundreds of pages of this, trying to see what's going to be built, what issues could arise. I'll jump through that. Construction stage, not just about does this conform with the code of practice and the like, but if there's a McDonald's on the corner, how are people going to get their Big Macs? Well, they're going to make a turn where they can to U-turn or come around. I mean, that's the kind of, you've got to broadly think about safety issues. Pre-opening, just before the ribbon's cut, did they put the right colored RRPMs in? Is the overlap of the barrier right? Are the height of the barrier right? There's a post-opening audit. So this just, as it's opened up, is everything correct? Are there any issues? Hopefully you can see this one. Getting right from that lane, going straight from that lane. Something weird going on there. Line marker got a stencil upside down, I'm pretty sure. The issue there. That's the kind of thing we should be weeding out. And existing conditions audit. So what's existing, what's there, and you look at it from that lens. Thematic audits, I'll take you through when we get there. Walking audits, cycling audits, motorcycle audits, and just some specific tweaks. Same principles, just taking that road user specifically into account. So what's going to happen now is I will answer any questions for them and get her screen up in a second. But what we're going to do is give you a specific topic, randomly generated. You have to do a little bit of research on it. Not a lot of research, bit of Googling, bit of what you can find fairly quickly. Then we want you to create something. You're free to create whatever you want. A video, a little bit of audio, a fact sheet, a cartoon, a TikTok, you name it, whatever you want to do. But that is going to be used then to share with everybody. We'll put it in a share folder. We want you to take that topic and make sure you think about it from a road safety and road safety auditing perspective. So what, like if you're doing a fact sheet and it's on, I don't know, splitter islands, you say, well, splitter island is this, and it can contribute to road safety in this. And as an auditor, you might want to think about swept paths or this or that, right? Here's a little picture of one, and that's the kind of thing we're looking for. We will give prizes out on one of the future modules after they've come in on the most creative way of presenting the information, the most technically sound, and the most engaging. Now, Emma, I've flown through the end there. Let's give out these topics.
Sure.
While I just have a look at any questions, okay?
Yep, no worries. Okay, let me share my screen.
Okay, Tom had a question around with that with stop signs added later. With the doubling up of stop signs was, and then a splitter island went in, and then it was this sort of progression of things that got added until eventually it's a roundabout now.
Okay, can you see that, Ken?
Yep.
So we have a list of participants and a list of names, and we'll just...
we will email this out to you.
Yeah, so absolutely. So don't worry if you can't.
We've only got a minute now.
Let's click it a few times.
Random generation, I love it.
And that's it.
Okay.
So I will send a document with all of those out to everyone so that we will know what they are. So
okay, and if you can't find information on this topic, just get in contact with us. I can point you at lots of documents. We're seeing lots of exciting things there. Y intersections, roundabouts versus traffic signals, barriers near curbs, dynamic visual instruction, self-explaining roads. They're all great things. And the reason we do this is because there's so many topics out there and there's no way we can cover it all. So getting you to do a bit of investigation and looking into these and sharing that, some creative ways to do it. It's there. Have it as a bit of fun. Just get some stuff down. To be creative if you want, put it in. We're fairly relaxed with the marking on this one. So if you have a good crack at it, you'll get your pass. And if you've got any issues, get in contact with myself or Emma. And here's the learning management system. Last 30 seconds.
Yep. So this is the learning management system. Again, if you don't have access to it, certainly shoot me an email and I'll hook you up. So the first module is module 1. So you'll see that any of the resources that Ken has provided today are there. The slides for today's PowerPoint are there. Your first quiz that you'll need to do and put in, including the Wallies, you'll need to just complete that as well. Now, your research topic here's where you'll find how to submit it. So you just need to click on the actual item. There's more instructions there as well. And to submit it, all you need to do is just scroll down a little bit, hit add submission, and then just drag and drop here where the blue arrow is, and then hit save changes, and that will submit that. Can I ask if anyone's working on a fact sheet or anything that's Word-based or PowerPoint-based, if you could possibly save it as a PDF before you upload it? It just makes it a little bit easier for us. If you're not able to, that's not a problem. I can PDF it later, but if you can PDF it before submission, that would be really, really helpful. This is due on this coming Monday, so you don't need to spend 1,000 hours on it or anything like that. And that's about all I need to say for now. If you do have any questions in accessing everything, certainly let me know, and I'm more than willing to help.
All right, get in contact if you need anything. Otherwise, jump into it, have a bit of fun. Catch you next module. Log in a bit early for a chance to win a prize.
Yeah, see you then.